Welcome to What to Do When, a podcast from real lawyers with real perspective, where we explore a variety of legal issues and scenarios. Each week, we focus on a new topic and discuss what to do when and if any of these legal scenarios ever happen to you or a loved one. With over 40 years of combined legal experience, our hosts offer their unique perspectives and insights on a range of real-life legal situations.
Hey guys, welcome to What to Do When, a Dummies guide to the Legalverse.
Real talk, real lawyers. We appreciate you coming and joining us for our podcast here at Critzer and Scott Cardani in Richmond, Virginia. Today's episode is really focused on protective orders, and they're multifaceted. So we're going to probably play a little ping pong, but there's many aspects, Scott, don't you think?
Yeah, I think most people don't understand protective orders, and I think quite often they're used wrongly. And sometimes they're used against people, and you have to know really what you're doing to really ferret through this. So
when we talk about protective orders, there's people who are trying to get a protective order against someone else, and then there's the person who they're trying to get the protective order against, right? So you've got to defend one, and also you've got people who are trying to get a protective order.
Exactly. Why don't we start there? Why would somebody want a protective order?
Well, I mean, the brass tacks of it is if there's been violence, force, or threat, or family abuse, then a person can seek a protective order, which is an order. It's just a piece of paper, quite frankly, but it's an order of a court that says that the respondent, the person that you have alleged, you say that they've done some bad things to you, they can't come within a certain feet of distance. They can't call you, contact you, send smoke signals. It's a no contact order between the two people.
And this is really important. It's a one-way street. And as I always say to people, like, whoever gets the protective order, it doesn't matter what they do. This is all for the person who has the protective order against them.
So if I say I'm the victim, and I say you're the bad guy, and I go to court and I say, Scott did these.
I'm not a bad guy.
Not a bad guy, hypothetically. Scott did bad things. He threatened me. He stalked me. He fill in the blank. And the court says, okay, here's your protective order. We're just going to start preliminarily. That's the protective order. What you're saying is that I can contact you, but you can't contact me.
That's really how it works. And
that doesn't seem fair.
It doesn't, but it's the way it works. And it's really kind of scary, actually. For instance, and just real quick note, I have to actually be served with that protective order. So a sheriff has to give it to me. I have to have it in my hand before it's effective. But once it's effective, I am pretty much at risk. So for instance, if Jackie and I ended up at the same grocery store, even though I was there a half hour before her and my grocery bin is completely full and I have to stay so many feet away from her and she walks into that grocery store, it's my obligation to leave. I'll even go a step further. Say Jackie decides to come over to my house and I'm in my house in my recliner watching a movie and she walks in. Guess who has to leave? Not her. I mean, as far as getting in trouble, as far as the law goes, I would be the one breaking the court order.
Even if I came to your house or came to the park where you were or came to the grocery store.
And we talk about that. I think some judges would ferret that out, but the point is that's how draconian it is. The point is that's how much it's against the one person and not the other. So I just wanted to make that clear.
And so I've gone and obtained a protective order. Do you get to say anything? How does that work?
Okay, there's kind of three stages of protective order. There's an emergency protective order. That usually happens when something bad has happened, like the police respond to a violent act, somebody was hurt, something happened kind of immediate. Sometimes the police will get those involved. Sometimes people will run to the magistrate, for instance, in the middle of the night because their boyfriend beat them up and get an emergency protective order. That's a 3-day protective order. So when you get that, and once that other person is served, that order is in place, but it only lasts for 3 days because the judge is going on the one person's testimony, one person's statement, actually. So what's the next stage?
Preliminary protective order. Who's involved in a preliminary protective order?
Still, it's a kind of a one-sided shot. That lasts for 15 days, and it's still that person going before the court and saying, hey, I need a protective order. They explain why, and what's the magic words you have to say that you're in fear or you've been harmed or the threat of you being harmed is enough for that judge to say, yeah, I believe you need a protective order.
What if they're not telling the truth? What if I have gone to the court and I have told the court that you chased me around this office with a knife when you weren't even here?
Yeah, and that's really where this stuff becomes really sketchy to me, because I've done a lot of defense as well as getting protective orders. People lie all the time. The problem is that protective order will stay in place once you're served until the next court date, which they set 15 days from that date. It's at that date when they try to get a permanent protective order, it's called, that everything begins to be a trial where two sides get to tell their story.
So basically the third time I go to court, first time I've gone because the police came, but they didn't believe me.
Yeah, you probably didn't go to court. You probably went to a magistrate, or it probably got through a magistrate,
Okay.
most likely. But
and then they set the court, somebody sets it for a few days later, 3 days later. And then I go to tell the judge that I need it longer. And then the judge gives me another couple weeks. And then I go the next time, and then you're going to be there that time.
Yep.
Now, are lawyers involved in that? Do you?
Well, this is an area, kind of like we talked about the other day when we were talking about reckless driving. This is an area where you definitely need a lawyer. Most people think they can just go, I'm going to go tell the truth and it'll all be all right. Well, not really.
Well, when you are defending, when you're on the side of someone that would be in your shoes in my hypothetical, how do you prepare them? What do you bring to the table for someone who's been accused of being the bad person?
Well, this is really important. And I think that's why you and I do what we do. You know, you have to sit down with this person and go through the facts and details and really ferret out what happened. Use that word ferret a lot. I don't even have a ferret. But using that, really, we have to construct a defense that matches your facts and circumstances. I see so many times when people go to court, they have no idea. The lawyer shows up. He doesn't really know what's going on. He's just trying to hold on to this fact that there wasn't really a threat. There wasn't really a force. There wasn't really this. But without constructing and doing the work and really looking into the facts and circumstances, and sometimes, unfortunately, nobody was there. For instance, like you said I ran around the office trying to stab you with a knife and I was in Tahiti. I have no facts and circumstances other than what? Here's my plane ticket. Here's my hotel reservation. Here's a credit card receipt to say I wasn't even there.
I mean, my pictures when I was on the beach that day.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So, you know, with social media and things like that, it's kind of easier to date things, although that can be fraudulently dealt with too. I mean, anything can be fixed anymore. But my point is, we strive to come up with a defense in that case that will fit. And so when we go into the court and the judge asks us what's happened in our side, we tell a story. And that story may be as simple as, I was in Tahiti, judge, here's my proof. Or it may be, yeah, I was there and this is what happened. Details matter. So when we prepare somebody or we talk to somebody, actually, I don't like preparing witnesses for that reason. I'll explain. If I sit down with you too much and I go through everything that happened and you get this rote memory, when you go into court, you sound like a robot. You don't sound authentic. You're worried about what you say. You're thinking about, oh, did I say that right? And a lot of times it comes off disingenuous when you have the most genuine part to play. So we have to go through the story and let you tell the story in a way that the judge is going to hear it from you the way you intend it. Not memorized, not coached, but just, this is what happened. Not that we can't help you walk through what you need to say, but it gets too coached. I think people lose it. And I see a lot of attorneys coaching their client to almost a script. And even though they may be in the right, it doesn't help.
So sometimes we, of course, hear people say, well, do I really need a lawyer for that? Or you might be able to Google how to handle a protective order hearing. So this question really is twofold. Do you really need a lawyer? And what consequences could there be if you are found having been, I guess, if you're found to have really done the thing that put this person in fear of bodily injury?
Yeah. It's so important not only to get a lawyer, but get the right lawyer. I mean, it just is. You know, you can have a lawyer who's never handled a protective order case. And, you know, we need to talk about the consequences of a protective order, but it's so important to get the right lawyer who has experience in this. And I realize that, you know, you're a young lawyer, you got to get experience somehow. If he's in a firm with a lot of experience, that's pretty good because then he's going to get training. But you don't want to hire a PI lawyer or somebody else to do
Personal injury is what that means.
Yes. You don't want to hire the wrong person, because you need a lawyer. You need somebody in there for you. Because
but is it a crime though? Is it? I mean, if I get a protective order against you, that's not criminal, right? You're not
sure
charged
isn't.
with a
But
crime.
I become in a prison. I have to give up my gun rights. I can't possess a gun. I would lose my concealed carry permit. I'm being watched at that point, and then all the world is on my actions. And again, I have to prove every time you come near me that I didn't come near you, and a violation is an automatic 1 day in jail.
So what happens
Minimal.
if we shared children together?
You have to, that's why you go to court and you explain all that, and you try to get something for the judge to give some kind of relief in that way. You can call grandma. Because as you said, I can't text Joe to text you. That's communication with you. Unless the court order says I can text Joe to text you to get our children. So it's got to be very specific. But that's really important. We together have done thousands of both getting protective orders and getting rid of protective orders. So it's really important to know the nuance. And one question I wanted to ask you briefly is, what do they need to get a protective order? Let's tell you the other way. I just got beat up by my wife. She's a little bigger than me. And not really. But my point is, she just beat me. And even if it isn't bigger than her, maybe she hit you with a baseball bat when you walked in the door because she's angry. And you're scared that in the middle of the night, she's going to do something to hurt you. She's just proved that, and that stuff happens, or you've been in fear for years of her behaviors and, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Maybe they've escalated or something.
Maybe they've escalated. So I come to you, Jackie, what's how can you help me?
It's so much of what you said, which is every case is so very dependent on the facts, especially on a protective order. And if I'm helping you obtain a protective order, I need to know not only what happened this particular, like what brought you here today. What was the event that said, I need to talk to somebody? We're going to talk about that event, but we're going to talk about 6-month history, a year history. We're going to see if there were things that sort of led you to this fear to begin with. Why does that matter? Sometimes you have a situation where it was a one-time thing. Everything was roses and Valentine cards and everything great. And then all of a sudden this one time, the person did something so out of character, but it was very scary. That happens. But more often than not, there's a buildup, and the history and the story is how I help you get the protective order to protect you.
And most people don't even know what the story was until we start talking to them. It's almost revelational. It's almost like, okay, I didn't think about that. That didn't seem like that. That didn't seem like a step.
Well, sometimes we hear, I think you'd agree, sometimes you hear a situation from someone trying to get a protective order and you think, that doesn't seem scary. So what else was going on? And so there are triggers. But we know that because of our experience, and a less experienced attorney in protective orders, and also a less experienced attorney in really family law matters may not have those skills to draw out the story that's going to help you get the protective order.
Absolutely. And sometimes, just so you know, sometimes it is really simple. Sometimes it's as much as you were in Barbados and there's nothing else really to prove. And I know that, and I'm going to tell you that, and we're going to go in and just handle that really fast. Or sometimes it's as easy as I have a 3-inch cut on my head, and he was in the house and he hit me and he's got a criminal charge now and he's going to jail. It's sometimes that easy, but sometimes it takes a lot of effort and a lot of work. But the bottom line is, it's the old saying, don't go to a gunfight with a knife.
Well, if he's going to jail, that seems like that I wouldn't have to help my person put on their case much.
Normally, as part of the bond hearing, because I do some criminal law, a lot of criminal law, but normally as part of the bond hearing, he's going to have a stay away kind of no contact order, which is sort of a protective order, has a little more teeth because if they violate, they're going back to jail. So there's some usually conditions there, even if, they just got arrested. Normally there's some kind of provision in letting them out while pending trial that they can't contact you. So that's usually there. You're right. But sometimes those things don't address everything, because a protective order will address who's going to pay the bills, where the custody of the children are, all those kind of extra things in a marital context. Now, if it's just a civil contact where Jackie's my neighbor and she's threatening me and I need because she threatens. No, just kidding. But if it's Jackie and me, that's a little different. There's a lot less stuff between us.
Right. No shared bills.
No shared bills, no kids, no things that we have to see each other. And I could care less if Jackie has to move into her mom's house, even though she lives in the house next door. And the judge says she has to stay 500 feet away. Well, 500 feet ain't going to work there because she lives 200 feet away from me when she's in the center of her house.
Are the consequences of a protective order the same from a legal perspective, whether it's a spouse or close family member or, former boyfriend, girlfriend versus the neighbor or the coworker? It's
kind of all the same. I mean, when it works out, once you get a protective order, it's a protective order, and you have to follow exactly what that protective order is. You lose so many of your constitutional rights, and that's the biggest issue. You become almost guilty till proven innocent instead of innocent until proven guilty. So the burden is always on you. And, and we see it all the time. I mean, when I started in practice, I did a lot of these in very difficult areas. And what would happen a lot of times is the guy would be in jail, get out of jail, and the very person who had the protective order against him would pick him up, would text them and call them. Sure. And as soon as they answered, that might go on for a day or two until, again, that guy was on the hot seat or something. He did something wrong. And then she'd say, oh, he violated a protective order. Here's the proof. And you go in court and say, well, Judge, she contacted him first. And the judge's like, I don't care. It's a one-way street. So important to understand that. Just because she texted you or he texted you or he called you or he came by the house doesn't change the protective order. It doesn't change. She's not going to get in trouble. You are. You have to know that.
Right. So what happens when you have a criminal case pending? Maybe it was the knife case, right? I say you've chased me around and now you've received a summons. You've been cited for, I don't know what that would be. You would know.
How about attempted murder?
Okay, attempted murder.
Big.
Attempted murder. Yeah, it was a big knife. Yeah. And I was really scared. But for, you tripping over the box, you would have killed me, let's say. But there's
Remember, you had the knife, not me. I was being chased by you. Let's get this straight.
So if there's a protective order hearing and a criminal hearing pending, they're both pending. Should you go to both? I mean, do you strategize on that?
Usually the Commonwealth attorney is going to handle all the criminal part of it. So they have an office victim witness that will help you. We'll all coordinate together usually in that respect. So I probably wouldn't go to the criminal side with you. I mean, obviously I could go if you need it, but I don't know that I offer much there because it's already going to be kind of taken care of. Sometimes I can do that with a phone call. Call the Commonwealth attorney and say, hey, look, this is really serious. We're really scared. I want some protection for my client. Make sure they're going to be doing that anyways, but it's good for them to hear your side, so to speak. So.
And I have gone to the criminal hearings with the victims and participated from just sitting in the seat. There's nothing I can do, but you're right. I've met with the Commonwealth's attorney. I've met with victim witness and also our client and just prepared them because the information that is in the criminal hearing, of course, applies to the protective order hearing. Sometimes we want a court reporter there because but what happens when it's the other way around? What happens when you've got a protective order hearing first, those 15 days have passed because the criminal hearing is not going to be scheduled that quickly.
You're talking if I'm the one who has the protective order. I'm the one accused of chasing you around, which would never happen.
Right, of course not.
So anyways, yeah, this is very, very, very important. Again, experience matters here because some guys would say, go ahead and do the protective order and get that off, and then all you have to do is the criminal. Well, remember, anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. What that means is you never want to say something in a civil trial before a criminal trial, ever. And most of the time, to be honest, I've been doing this a long time. Rarely does it matter. But on the small, infantile chance that you're going to say something in that protective order hearing that makes you guilty in a criminal hearing, you need to be quiet, get the criminal out of the way.
So I have seen what I thought was a seasoned attorney show up to a protective order hearing. I represented the victim. She was trying to get the protective order made permanent, and the seasoned attorney was also his criminal defense attorney, and he wanted to move forward with the protective order with this, I think it was a strangulation case. I mean, it was heavy duty. And while I didn't want to do his job for him, I did say to him, are you sure you want to move forward today? And he sort of looked at me a little cross-eyed, and I said, what do you want to do? And it sort of set off some alarm bells, but like you're saying, the experience matters and paying attention to the details matters and who you hire to represent you on either side really does matter.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say, I think we probably need to close this up, but the last thing I'll say is this. Why it's so important. Jackie and I understand, even if we accompany you to the criminal trial and we're just handling your civil, we may be able to negotiate the best deal for you at that point based on your kids, based on your family structure and all those things,
sure.
Based on the Commonwealth, and you're going to have a defense attorney there representing him most likely. They may want him out of jail, for instance, so he works. Well, we can agree to letting him out of jail as long as this are in place. So there's so much we can do in certain circumstances. And the good thing about Jackie and I, we're going to be honest with you, there's really nothing we can do at this hearing. And we're not going to go, but even if our only purpose is to bring peace to you, we're willing to do that. That's not an issue for us. That's our job. But we'll be honest with you and practical and say, hey, this is what we believe we can do at this hearing. This is what we can't. And I think being honest, being practical, being upfront is so important in these cases. And, if somebody comes in and asks for a protective order and I don't think they can get one, I'm going to tell them that.
Sure.
I think it's so important because so many people spend a lot of money running around the courthouses, never getting anything because they weren't given the right advice up front. You don't have a protective order case.
Right.
And a lot of people, quite frankly, use this to get the upper hand. Talk about that and we'll close after that. But I think...
Well, I was just going to say that we have several podcasts that are tied very closely to protective orders. What to do when there's a divorce that involves a protective order. What to do when maybe you were never married, but there is a custody situation and there's a protective order involved. So we have several podcasts that will touch on protective orders that will expand greatly on protective orders in general. But I think where we are now is a great place to wrap up.
Thanks, guys, for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of What to Do When. For more episodes, be sure to subscribe to our podcast, and we encourage you to check our archives to listen to previous topics. Tune in next week for a new episode and some fresh perspective from Critzer Cardani.